Hello, everyone. My name is Brenda Avina, and I will be your host today on behalf of Hispanotech. At the end of the workshop, we will have a networking session where you can meet new people and talk about what you learned. Hispanotech is a non-for-profit organization whose mission is to help Hispanic professionals integrate and advance their careers in Canada. We accomplish this through various ways, such as skills development series, volunteering opportunities, networking events, mentorship programs, and so much more. Now, I would like to welcome our speaker for today. Welcome Dana Doswell. She's the VP of Business Development of Sundips, a digital transformation company in Colombia, and the owner of Dossi Inc. She previously started and grew her own digital marketing agency in Toronto, where she helped financial and legal organizations develop integrated digital strategies that range from effective communications to CRM implementations. During this time, she began learning Spanish as a hobby and spent over 8 months living in different parts of Latin America to better understand the cultural differences between these parts of the world. Inspired by what she learned, she started Dossi Inc. to train ambitious Latinos like you as how to grow their careers in North America. Dana speaks fluent Spanish, loves lifting weights, and is slightly obsessed with Colombian coffee. I totally agree with Dana. Colombian coffee is so amazing. I hope we can have a coffee this year. We are so glad to have you here, and we are so excited to keep learning from you, Dana. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you so much, Brenda. That was amazing. So today we're going to be diving into storytelling for interviews and presentations. And this is all about being a powerful communicator, no matter if you're talking in your first language, your second language, or even your third language, because I know there are many people here tonight that speak more than just Spanish and English or Spanish and Portuguese. Now, the entire purpose or my hope for everybody coming to this workshop is that you feel like you have a solid process that you can use to be able to apply storytelling to both interviews and presentations. We are going to be focusing a little bit more on interviews because I know with Hispanotech, that's really a major focus, is really helping to support people through the job process. That being said, we are going to go over how to apply storytelling for presentations, and the two processes are very, very similar. And so the agenda that we're going to go over today is, first off, which is a topic that is extremely fascinating for me, and I hope that it's equally as fascinating for you, is what actually happens in your brain when you hear a story. You know, we hear a lot about storytelling and how amazing it is, and you know why every business needs to incorporate it. But why is that happening? Why is this such a big trend? It's not just because the word itself is trendy, but there's actually a science behind why storytelling is so powerful. After this, we're going to go into how can you tell a good story? What is the formula, or what are the steps that you need to go through to actually know that you're telling an emotionally gripping story and pull your audience in so that they can connect with you and so that you can develop a deep relationship that means the other person is going to be much more willing to hire you. And then lastly is, how do you practically apply this to being in an interview or presenting to a stakeholder such as your boss or even an end client? Now, I wanted to ask, I had a one-on-one session over the weekend, and I started the session off with just a really quick 3-minute breathing exercise that was all about de-stressing or taking stress away. I know this isn't super business focused, so I just wanted to take a second here. Is anybody interested in doing a quick 2-3 minute breathing exercise, de-stress a little bit, and then that way we kind of have open minds diving into the rest of the workshop? So let me know if you are up for it, comment in the chat. And if we have a couple people, then I will lead a quick little breath work thing. All right, people are all for it. All right, so if you would like to, you can turn your camera off or you can keep it on however you want. And essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna do 2 different types of breathing. So the first one is all about strengthening our spine or the backside of our body. And then the second one is specifically focused on stress release. I'm going to lead you through it, but right now I'm just going to give you a quick example. So the first thing that we're going to do is you're going to close your eyes and you're going to breathe in only through your nose. But as you breathe in, I want you to picture that breath coming from the top of your head and going all the way down your spine to the very base of your spine. And then as you breathe out, I want you to picture all of that air coming directly out of your chest. So it's going to sound like this. And we're going to do that 3 times. So the air coming all the way down your spine and then breathing out directly through your chest. We're going to do that 3 times. After that, we're going to do something else. There's a couple different names for this breath, but essentially we're going to breathe in for a count of 2 like this. Hold for 1 second and then breathe out for a count of 4. And then we're going to breathe in for a count of 3, out for a count of 6, in for a count of 4, and out for a count of 8. And don't worry, I'm going to lead you through it completely. So everybody just get comfortable, take 1 deep breath, feel your body, feel your spine against a chair or wherever you're sitting, and we're going to get started. Okay, so if you don't have your eyes closed already, you can just let your eyes close. And we're going to take a deep breath in through our nose and feel that air go all the way down our spine. Ready? We're going to breathe in and now go. Breathing in, breathing in, breathing in, feeling that all the way down to the base of your spine. And then as you breathe out through your mouth and let this come through your chest. Take a pause. Okay, we're going to do that again. Ready? And breathe in. Feeling that air come all the way down your spine to the very base of your spine. Feel how strong your back feels. Now let it all out through your chest. Okay, we're going to do this 1 more time. Ready? And breathe in through your nose. Breathing in, feeling that fall right down your spine, to the very base of your spine. Now breathing out through your chest. Just take a pause here for a second and just breathe. 1 normal breath. Okay, so now we're going to breathe in for 2 seconds through our nose, pause for 1 second, and then breathe out for 4 seconds through our mouth. And I'm going to lead you through it, okay? So we're going to go ready and breathe in 1, 2 through your nose, hold for 1 second. Now breathe out through your mouth for 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're going to do that 1 more time. Ready? And breathe in for 2. 1, 2. Hold for 1 second. And now breathe out through your mouth for 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to breathe in for 3 and out for 6. Okay, ready? We're going to go and breathing in 1, 2, 3. Hold there for 1 second and breathing out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 8. Okay, ready? We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding for 1 second and breathing out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we're going to do this 1 last time. Ready? And breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 1 second and breathing out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Awesome. So just keep your eyes closed for another second. Take a couple of normal breaths. Let your shoulders kind of fall back a little bit and just feel some of that stress from the day leaving you. You don't have to answer any more emails. You're allowed to be present here and you're allowed to come here to learn. And whenever you are ready, you can open your eyes back up. No rush. We're just going to hang out here for 1 minute. How was that for you guys? Let me know how that was for you in the chat. Relaxing. Feel like you slept for 8 hours. Awesome. So this is a really easy breath practice. And the key here is breathing in for 2, out for 4, or essentially like breathing in for like 2, out for 4, in for 3, out for 6. And this actually does something, it de-stresses your vagus nerve, which helps to regulate your stress response in your body. So if you're going into an interview, if you're going into a work presentation, if you are stressed about anything, this is a great breathing exercise to do because it actually physically calms your body down. So really, really easy practice that you can take with you. If you have any questions about it or you don't remember how to do it, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram would probably be the best way. And yeah, I think that's a really great way to start off the workshop we're doing today. I forgot to show you that one. Okay, awesome. So welcome back and let's get started. We'll dive in, everybody with fresh minds. And this is so fascinating to me. And I really wanted to start off by diving a little bit into this is usually when we're listening to presentations or when we're explaining our experience, we tend to be very logical and we really focus on the facts, which is great. And this is kind of what happens if I'm presenting to you and I'm just saying, so storytelling is powerful. And there are many studies that show that it engages your brain. So you should do it. That's often how we communicate when we're in a business setting, especially if we're nervous. And when that happens, our audience's brain stays pretty much flat. The only thing that happens is the part of your brain or the part of their brain activates that is responsible for taking the language or the words that you're saying and making sense of it. So instead of hearing like blah, 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 you would hear resume, interview, practicality, whatever it is that they're saying to you or that you're saying to them. But when we listen to stories, the parts of our brain light up as if we're actually experiencing that story. And I was actually just sharing with Brenda and some of the other amazing Hispanotech volunteers right before this presentation. Yesterday I was flying to Florida and I had about a 4-hour flight and I was like, great, I'm going to journal, I'm going to meditate on my flight and I'm going to get into some business strategy. I'm going to be so productive. And then the little movie thing on the flight came up and it showed the movie Avatar. And I love that movie. And I was like, okay, like screw all of that. And I just decided to spend, I think it's a 2-hour and 40-minute movie. So I spent more than half of my flight choosing to watch Avatar. And I just remember watching this and just realizing how powerful that story is because it overrode this other productive stuff that I wanted to do just because I wanted to be lost in a story. And so you can imagine if we are in an interview and if we're answering using storytelling versus just logically explaining what we did, and this audience, this person that we want to hire us, if they are there experiencing our emotions, they're experiencing what it was like to achieve what we achieved, you can imagine how much more impactful that is compared to just, sequentially telling all the factual and logical things that you did in a job. And so this is extremely fascinating, not only because there's science behind it, but because naturally we're storytellers as human beings. It's very natural. And especially I know Latin people are amazing storytellers. Like that is something that I have really come to love about the culture. It's so embedded in how people communicate, how people socialize. And so in this sense, I really want you to let that part of your culture come out and not feel like it's bad. What we're going to do today is we're going to shape it a little bit. We're going to say, okay, here's how we can take this natural ability to storytell, this natural understanding of what it means to connect with other people and use it in order to leverage our own skills and improve our interviewing skills, improve our presentations, and actually move forward in our careers. And the reason why this matters so much is because experiences are unforgettable, but words are not. I can say to you, oh yeah, I had an amazing day yesterday and I sold $100,000. Oh my God, that's so amazing. Congratulations. But I can say to you, oh my gosh, you'll never believe it. Yesterday I had the final call with this client and I've been working with them for 6 freaking months to get this contract signed. And finally the CEO made it to the meeting and he was there. I was extremely nervous, but I finally got the chance to pitch him. And right there on the spot, he said yes. He said yes. And I got it signed and we're moving it forward. And I just can't believe it. 2 totally different experiences. Can you imagine forgetting about what I just told you? No, you're going to probably go and tell your friends like, hey, guess what my friend just told me versus, hey, I finally made that sale. 2 totally different things. And what I want to show you here is just a couple quick little examples. And then I'm going to ask for a volunteer in a minute just to kind of show you side by side, what does this mean? So, all of us, most people here, we love sharing our food on Instagram, whatever it is. And so I just picked this kind of funny example. And this is also in Canada, it's summer right now. And I know everybody's starting to have barbecues again, which is amazing. So that's kind of what made me think of it. So the words I could use to explain what I made for dinner last night is like, yeah, we made burgers last night on the barbecue and they were really good. Pretty typical way of telling your mom or your friend what you had for dinner last night. Now, if you wanted to turn it into a story, I could say we made these amazing Angus burgers last night on the barbecue and we put garlic and onion and they were so delicious. Like you just immediately get this picture in your mind of like the burger that I ate with the onion and the garlic and with the barbecue, and you're thinking of the environment, of the ambiance. And so this is a really tactical example of the difference between words and facts versus converting it into a story. Here's another example. Let's say I'm applying for a project manager position and I'm going through the interview process, and they were saying like, okay, so tell us a little bit about your role in the last company. And you're like, yeah, so I worked as a project manager in my last role, and I was responsible for overseeing 3 different projects that had 6 people on each project. And, it was really focused on the ed tech industry. Oh, okay, interesting. It kind of falls flat a little bit. But if I provide this context and I turn it into a story and I'm talking about the why did I get brought in? Why was I there? Yeah, so this company brought me in a project manager role because things were absolutely crazy. They were growing, but as a result of growing, they were struggling to keep all their projects on time. And as you can probably imagine, when they had 6 different projects that were not going on their timeline, it was causing a lot of issues with their clients, in-house capacity, and all of those things. So they brought me in to help bring some relief for the existing team that was there, make sure they could start getting their projects back on time. And honestly, it was just a huge stress relief for the team that I was working with. So you can really understand there, what was that immediate impact that I had on that company? And this is just, even a simple little introduction. And so this is a little bit of what we're going to be going over today, but I also really, really highly suggest is even screenshotting this if you can right now, and using this as a little bit of a template to start being able to practice this words to story. How can I make this more interesting? How can I add more context? How can I show not only the financial impact that I had on my company, but that emotional impact? What was that big problem that existed and why did they bring me in? So I'll just pause here for 1 second if anybody wants to take a screenshot or take an additional note. And then I'm going to ask for a volunteer, somebody that wants to get some feedback, or a couple of volunteers. Let's pretend that you are in an interview right now and I just asked you, can you just tell me a little bit about your last role? What did you do? Just tell me a little bit about it. Who wants to volunteer? Who wants to give it a go? Aldo, I see you nodding your head.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
Awesome. All right, so do you want to pretend, what was the role that you just interviewed for again?
It's a senior technical product manager.
Okay, so let's just pretend that you're interviewing for that again. So Aldo, really excited to be chatting with you. Can you just give me a little brief overview of, I guess, the role that you're in right now? What are you doing in the company?
Yeah, so I'm a solutions architect for a hypergrowth AI startup here in Austin, Texas. I help deliver a scalable, trusted AI solutions for a diverse set of verticals and use cases, from banking to finance to healthcare, while embedding trusted AI in the process. And by doing that, we can deliver very differentiated business outcomes for our customers.
Okay, was that your words or was that your story?
That was so I mean, this is like, I'm fresh
Yes.
that. I feel like that could be like more of my words.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I'm just saying like, okay, this is what I do. I added some adverbs there, but I feel like it could be better.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think is really important to point out here is often when we get nervous, and I think we saw this last week as well, we start using a lot of these words like differentiated outcomes and like trusted solutions. And we think that it sounds awesome, and it usually sounds better in written word, but when we're talking, it sounds a little odd, like it sounds a little unhuman. And so when I think about, like, when I kind of read through the lines of what you do, like if you're actually working at like a hyper growth AI startup, how many of those are there in the world that are actually being used in real world business applications? Not that many. Like that's a pretty niche field,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
when you're talking about what you're doing there, I would probably add a little bit of context, like this that I just did, is understanding what was the company going through, what was that need that they had, and then they brought you in to fill it. So
Mm.
you're technical, but you also have the sales side. And so this has always been something for everybody else's understanding. Aldo and I have worked together a couple of times, and he's really freaking amazing at bridging technical with business. And that's something that's extremely difficult when you get into artificial intelligence and really, really technical concepts. And so, Aldo, if I were you, I'd be explaining that is, you know, AI is obviously an extremely complicated field to work in. And this company was really struggling with having somebody that could speak the technical language and the business language so that they could work internally with the engineering and like the data science teams, but then also be able to understand and bring the end client requirements back to that team so that they could start winning more business. And so they brought me in to really be able to fill that role and to help them to create some processes so that when we wanted to continue growing, I could teach that process to other people if they were missing either the technical side or if they were missing the business facing side. And so I didn't really use any complicated
That's
business
awesome.
language, but I just described the amazing value that you brought to your company.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you for being the first volunteer. Anybody else want to give it a go?
Yeah, I'd like to share, Dana.
Yeah.
Okay. If I went in my words, I would say, yeah, I was as a consultant in my last role. That wasn't words. But my story is that my company was looking for somebody who was, courage enough to go to a territory based on the Caribbean, uh, where there are islands and there are, some very relaxing environment. And the challenge was to find someone that was able to have a conversation, a business conversation and technical conversation with people that need achieve some results. So they were looking for somebody that was able to have a conversation in different languages, and especially in English. And they went into. I was looking at a change in my role. So we find in that point where the company talked to myself, and I decided to move to this island to go to a different project. So the challenge here was that the people was focused in specific projects, and I brought my experience and my comprehension of the solutions. But the very interesting story here is that there was so many other people that was going to this island, and they weren't able to convince customers because they are accustomed to a different mood of operation and different kind of business. So my previous experience in other, I can tell, boring islands like Bahamas, like Jamaica, like Trinidad, and I say boring, but they are not really boring. And the environment is very cool. And this assignment was in Puerto Rico. So that experience, I was able to brought this experience going to Puerto Rico, but it was very easy to achieve the result for the company and for our customers, and having the way they do business. So the company grew about 200% with my experience and understanding of the customers, and we all were able to achieve our goals.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, Alfonso really applied a lot more of these storytelling components and giving more context. And I think that's actually really interesting um I really understand that kind of being like a cultural bridge, being able to be that person that can have, not only the surface level conversation, but understands what some of these other cultural nuances are that are happening. And I'm sure everybody here experiences that, like whether or not you are like a native English speaker, you're from North America, but like maybe you have family in Latin America or vice versa. there's all of these little things like that are unsaid in the conversation. And so really being able to bridge that is an amazing skill set in itself. So yeah, Alfonso, the only real feedback that I have for you, and this is you're going to be able to do as we keep going, take everything that you just said and organize it a little bit more. So being able to communicate, okay, this need occurred, so they brought me in order to do this, and then we were able to achieve this. And you're going to see how we can kind of map that out. But yeah, thank you, really good job, and that was awesome. I think maybe we have time for one more person if you're quick. Anybody else? Maybe a girl. Let's get a girl.
Me.
Yes, who's that? Rosanna?
Yes, that's me.
Awesome. Yes.
I have been working as a senior operation analyst for one of the 5 banks. And my last position was leading leading a project that need to downsize the high volumes of calls by 10%. So I start collecting all the information and put it into Excel file, filter all the information and put it into trends and show my senior manager what exactly was the issues. I create a plan. I create and develop a plan. I was implemented through executions along with the relationship managers. This has a successful implementation and was implemented in 5 countries and with the results of 10% downsize.
Mm-hmm.
And
awesome. Awesome. Okay. So same, I'd give you some similar feedback to Aldo is your facts are good. But especially when people are first meeting us and we really want to engage with them, it's really important to connect emotionally. And so what I would say here, and I don't have like as much context with you, but kind of going back to like, okay, what was happening in the company? Like you say, okay, we need to reduce call volume, I think, by 10% or reduce something by 10%. So what happened that made that necessary? So like Scotiabank was starting to see that with all of their analysts, there were, this problem was occurring. And so they really realized that they needed somebody to come in that was able to, like decrease the call volume so that we can get back to doing whatever. And so when I was going through the interview process, I was really interested in this because it's similar to what I'd done before. And it was also kind of a new challenge for me. And so when I went in, I was kind of just given, the resources that I needed. So I went in, was able to identify that, wow, okay, nobody has actually looked at tracking all of this yet. So I was, sitting down, figuring out how can we actually track this. So I was able to create a tracking system that led me to, like working with so-and-so. And at the end of the day, I was able to create a plan for 5 different countries, which actually got implemented. And eventually we were able to hit that 10% decrease. So that 10% decrease is really that end point that you're working towards. And so this is a really good tip. You should write this down is whenever you have a specific outcome, and that's why you hired, you want to tell your story. And then at the end of your story is when you tell what that outcome was. And so because of all of this, we were able to do whatever. We were able to increase sales by $100,000 for Aldo. We're able to grow accounts by 15% because of this process or because of my work. Rosanna, same way, we were able to decrease call volume by 10% because this plan was implemented across 5 countries. Because what you're doing is you're building that interest. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, it's like, and we did it, and we absolutely failed. And then we figured out how to do it better the next time. So you're always like building this emotional peak when you're telling a story. And then you have kind of that end result that's like, oh my gosh, okay, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really interesting. And usually what will happen is when you tell a story the right way, you're going to get tons more questions. And that is what you want in an interview. When you know that an interview is going well, is when you can tell that the person interviewing you has stopped looking at their list of questions. All they're doing is just asking you the questions that are coming to their mind because of the information you're giving them. Because you can start to see, okay, and what was your biggest lesson that you learned from that job? Okay, that's a pretty standard interview question. But then, the next thing comes, well, how did you create a and for 5 different countries? That's such a specific question to the story that you told. And now you get to say, well, I sat down and based on my knowledge of this, this, and this, I knew that in this country, this was going to work. This country, this was going to work. And so you can start to see that person connecting with you and starting to see their mind matching your abilities to their problems. And that is when you really start to connect. And that is when you really move to the top of the list for the job. Okay, guys, we're going to continue. Really, thank you so much, Susanna and Aldo and Alfonso. Really great, guys. And I also think this is a really interesting little quote, and really off of what I was just saying, is that the brains of the person telling a story and listening to it can synchronize. This is extremely interesting. So this is essentially saying, if I'm telling Rosanna a story, our brains can start to synchronize. And I'm not entirely sure scientifically how this works, but this person is from Princeton and did a really interesting study on it if anybody wants to look it up. And what this means, again, is that you're so engaged with that person and you're so connected to that person that when you leave, that feeling of that connection is going to stay with them. And they're going to be much more interested in working with you, learning from you, and just putting you in a position where they're going to be with you a lot compared to somebody that's giving really generic answers. So pretty cool quote or fact here. So how do you actually tell a good story? What is this formula? What is this foundation? How can you actually build this out? It is simple in words, a little more difficult in practice, but here are the storytelling basics. So we're just going to go through. I wish that every single word started with P, because that would have been way more satisfying. And there's just like the word relationships at the bottom, but what can you do? I was trying to think of another word for it, but nothing came. So people, purpose, place, plot, and relationships. So people is pretty straightforward. Who was there? Also very linked to relationships is, what is your relationship to this person? Also very important when you're going through an interview or when you're presenting, so that you can really tailor that messaging, but you can also show, if you are a, entry-level data analyst versus a, director of data analytics, obviously the way that you tell the story, your part in the story, and your relationship with your colleagues is going to be very different. The purpose, also very important. Why were you there? Everything that we just went over. Why did your job exist? As your job started progressing, what problems are you solving? So why were you there? What did you continue adding to the company? Place, where and when is this happening? Which company? Is this in a physical place? Are you virtually doing all of your work? Was this a year ago? Was this in the morning? Was this, late at night? Did someone call you at 2 a.m. and you jumped on it and you were figuring something out? Plot, what actually happened? What were the sequence of events? This is a little more operational, but yeah, what actually happened? What did you do? And all of these are really linked together, and they really create this foundation of a good story. And so applying this to interviews and presentations. And so it's pretty much the exact same thing. I just really want to shift your perspective a little bit, is when we are storytelling for interviews, you are the main character and we're looking back at an experience. We're always pulling from a previous experience, which is good and bad in a sense. So good in the sense that this happened, it's our own memories, and we can use this to create a story where we bring that other person in. And so I just changed a little bit here just to kind of help you visualize this. So people, this is going to be your colleagues, clients, and partners. But now, for example, there's so many funny working from home stories like Zoom fails, things that include your friends or your family. So it doesn't only have to be limited to the people that you work with. And, sometimes depending on that kind of vibe, I like to say, that you have with your interviewer, if you feel like they're a pretty open person, and maybe you had a really difficult personal struggle at the same time you were doing a lot, while you were working, then you can also include that kind of personal anecdote in the stories that you're telling if you feel comfortable with it. Purpose. Why was this a priority for you? Why was this a priority for the company? What business value did it serve? This is an extremely, extremely important pillar of storytelling during interviews or business presentations. And this is because it shows your ability to understand the value that you add to the company. And at the end of the day, no matter if you are a salesperson or you are a data analyst or you're a software engineer, you are always selling yourself whenever you're going into an interview. And when you are selling yourself, you need to show that you can solve a problem. That is what we all do every single day. We solve a problem that exists in the market or in the business. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or whatever. And so you need to be able to show that okay, if you're a project manager, what business value do you bring? Why does your position exist? What problem were you solving for the people that hired you? Because most likely the person that is hiring you now, or the person that's considering hiring you, wants to know, does this person understand my issues? Does this person understand what frustrates me every day? Can this person really, really help me? So this is extremely important. Place, obviously, at what company was this happening? When was this happening? You know, is this a job that you had 3 years ago, 10 years ago, last year? And this can really change. You know, if you're telling a story about when your career first got started and why you were inspired to get into working with AI, for example, then you might be telling a very different story because that's very early on in your career. And so you want to communicate that. Yeah, so this is about 10 years ago when my career was first getting started. And I thought I was the smartest person in the room all the time. Went to work at an AI company, and in about 3 seconds, I realized I was the dumbest person in the room, and it stayed like that for about another 3 years. And I'm still lucky to this day if I feel like I'm even the person that's half as smart as the smartest person in the world. So you can start to see it can change the way that you're telling the story, and then that also changes the way that the person perceives it. Because if you're telling a story about a job that you had 10 years ago at the start of your career, you don't want to give the impression to that person that you have stayed at that same knowledge level. You know, again, kind of touching a little bit on what we talked about last week with marketing yourself and your ability to continuously add a different type of value as your career progresses. We also want to be able to show that in an interview. And then the plot. So if you had this purpose, if you were, you know, brought in as a project manager, maybe going back to this other example of, yeah, things were crazy. There was just too many projects. They were growing too quickly. Things were totally off timeline. And so, okay, how did this play out? What did you do? You know, what were those steps that you took? And what was the sequence of events? Okay, well, I came in, realized that we actually needed me plus one other person. So I immediately went to, you know, like the director of programs or operations or whatever, and said, realistically, we have another 3 projects coming in. I'm going to be able to take those 3 plus 1 more, but we're going to need another person to handle these other 4. It's just not possible without that. So again, showing the sequence of events and your thought process behind your actions as you went through your career and each of these storylines or each of these experiences within your jobs. And then relationships, also really important. Understanding who are these other characters in your story. If your, you know, boss asked you to do something, oh, well, my boss asked me to do this because we believe that it would add this value to the company. And so as I was going through this program, I had weekly meetings with them to update them, blah, blah, blah. They took an amazing interest in me, and they were actually an amazing mentor. Or, you know, they kind of just like left me to do it independently. And so I really made sure to figure it out by myself. So it changes. I just wanted to give you a couple more specific questions to really get your brain thinking about how to tailor a story for interviews. And what I would suggest is if anybody here is preparing for an interview or considering interviewing in the near future, is for each job that you've had, and this depends, you know, if you've had a job for over a year, you can probably find 3 to 4 major stories that take you through major projects or transformations, changes that occurred in your job and in the company while you were there, and use this storyline, these storyline basics, to create a story of each of those experiences. So when someone says, so tell me about that, you're not like, you're like, yeah, actually, that was really interesting because the whole purpose of implementing that program was to do this. And I was working with, you know, the senior business development rep, and I was also working with the engineering team. And I was really able to be the bridge between these 2 teams. And we did this, and this. So sit down again, maybe this weekend, we're bringing this back, cup of coffee, a journal, go through some of the experiences that you've had and really start building out these stories. It's going to be really powerful. And there's a lot of text on here, so I'm going to read it out to you. But I wanted to give you a personal example of a way that I use storytelling when I was going through a job process. And this is really interesting because I actually have a degree in finance and accounting. I worked in finance and accounting for about 4 months at KPMG, and I absolutely hated it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to completely switch careers. People tell me that I'm going to be good in sales, so I'm going to just get a sales job. So Nudge Rewards, or now it's called Nudge, it's a startup in Toronto, and they were hiring their first business development rep. So like their first, it's not exactly a full salesperson, but like the person that does like the cold calling and prospecting and blah, 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 blah. So I got this job. I've been working at it for a little while, and then I wasn't super happy with where I was. I learned a lot. And so then I started to consider, okay, where do I want to go from here? So I started applying to some other jobs. And I remember in one interview, they were asking me about cold calling. And so they were like, so how did you get started with cold calling? Like, what was, like what really got you into it, or got you, learning how to do it? And so this is a little story that I told them was, okay, so I have no sales experience. This is about a year ago. It's my second day starting at Nudge, and I get thrown right into prospecting. So I'm sitting there, we're in an open office space with the VP of sales, Carrie, who I remember, and the other business development guy that they hired. I've literally known these people for pretty much a day and a half, because this is my second day. And my boss just goes, okay, so I believe in just throwing you in. We're just going to see how you do. So we're going to sit down and we're going to start doing some cold calling. Now, mind you, I have literally never cold called anybody in my life. I have been auditing information systems for banks and insurance companies for the last 4 months. So a little bit of a different change of scenery here. So we sit down and she's like, Dana, you're going to go for fast food chains, and Nick, the other guy's going to go for retail. And I'm like, all right, so I'm going to just start big. I'm going to call the CEO of McDonald's. Like, imagine this guy's totally not going to pick up. So he picks up, second ring, which was absolutely terrifying. And I did not make it to getting a meeting with him. I did not make it to getting past really 2 minutes of talking with him, but I did find out the person that I actually needed to talk to. And that person was the director of operations. And about 2 months later, I ended up getting a meeting with him. I ended up getting him a meeting with one of our account executives. And that was really how I got my introduction to cold calling, which was terrifying, but I really don't think it could go any worse than that. So I wanted to share this little personal story with you guys so you can see I'm not just preaching that you should do this. This is actually something that I've done to get a job, and it really, really works. And you can see here in the blue lettering, I put the different aspects or the different pillars of storytelling. So place, people and relationships, purpose and plot. And so you can really probably feel or imagine as I'm sitting there cold calling the COO of McDonald's, how terrified I was, which I'm literally not kidding you. My hands were shaking and I felt like I couldn't see for a minute after I got off the phone. And if anybody's in sales, you'll know that feeling. And cold calls are still not my favorite thing to do, honestly, but I no longer pretty much go blind when I do them. So I think that there's some progress there. So again, take this, start practicing, and really start building storytelling into the way that you do interviews. And as usual, let's grab a volunteer. So let's get a couple of different people. Now, I want to kind of go back to that exercise that we were just doing, but this time I want you to take a second, write out some bullet points, and use the people, purpose, place, plot, and relationship framework. And I want you to tell me your story. So let's take a minute. And if you want to volunteer, just type in the chat. I'm not going to ask you to go right away. I want you to take a minute to write some notes down, but just say, I'd like a chance. If you would like to go, just write that in the chat. Grab a sip of water. Nobody. There has to be. Okay, Lisa, I love it. All right, Lisa, let me know when you're ready, but no rush.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, let's start. The position that I got for this friend is a finance manager. So it was this company who renders services to maquila operation and abroad companies. So we have this big client that they wanted to move in Mexico under the umbrella of my company. So this was a very big presentation that we had to do, but my boss, who was the owner of the company, he has to leave to Congress, National Congress, and he delivered the responsibility to the me to me and other coworkers. So this company brought a very high level staff to this meeting. So when I knew already what they needed to get for this company in Mexico, because the company was in Mexico. And then I started making the presentation. It was, we were 6 person in the staff and they were like 12. It was the human resources director and the operation director of this company. So when they start asking for the requirements, I just see my colleagues and we made an agreement because we already know what what we can deliver and what not. So each person of the staff, human resources, answered, and I was more like a backup because I was on the finance side. And at the end, they make this funny question for me because they said, hey, we want to have 120 employees. Can you deliver that? And I said, yes, and you can grow. You will grow. You will grow for 300 and 1,000. Anytime that you need any of the requirements that you have, you will have it. Funny thing, for the next 6 months after we signed the contract, they start growing and growing, and they got to have 3,000 employees. Can you imagine what type of support do they need? And each stage of the growing, I was with my partners. We were delivering and changing all the structures to give them the support. So for me, this was very, very, very stressful, but also um, a good experience because it's all my brain was like every step that they took. It was something that we need to be in tune with them.
Mm-hmm.
And at
That's
the end,
awesome.
yes, at the end they renewed the agreement like 4 times.
Awesome. Okay. So I really, really like your ending. And I felt like at the end, you really streamlined what you were communicating. So like, I like how you said, you know, growing from like 120 to 1,000, and then they ended up growing to 3,000. My feedback for you is to really focus when you're thinking of your stories, really try and focus first on the purpose and understand, be able to say the sentence. So in this sense, like, you know, our client needed whatever in order to whatever. So I'm just putting this in the chat there. This is going to help communicate more clearly what is the purpose behind this program or these actions that you were taking. Because that's the part I felt like there was a little bit confusing for me. It was like, okay, at the beginning, I didn't really understand what was happening. And then when you started talking about the growth, I was like, okay, this makes more sense. So really like hone in and focus in on our client needed or my boss needed in order to do this. And so I worked with the director of HR and this person in order to deliver and really also be able to scale with our client to go from 120 to go to 500 to go to 1,000 to eventually go to 3,000 people, which you can imagine on our end, we really had to be able to scale up operations, you know, in tune. I like that, in tune with our client. And so really being able to share that sequence of events and the thought process behind it is really going to help you really clarify that message.
Okay, thank you.
Good job. And thank you for volunteering. Okay, so we're almost at time, so we're going to keep going. But one thing that I think is really fun is if you can find even anybody else that is here on this webinar right now. I know a lot of people from Hispanotech in the community know each other, or if you're part of my community, I Level Up, reach out to people on the Slack channel and have some fun. Like go practice this, tell each other stories. It doesn't only have to be about work. You can also practice this. I'm sure every single person here has some amazing stories from when you were, I don't know if you were immigrating from Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica, wherever. You know, I'm sure you have some pretty crazy, frustrating, amazing stories. So practice with your friends where you feel comfortable and just get your brain used to thinking like this. So just a little note there, definitely reach out and use the network that you have. And that's what I just said. And so storytelling for presentations, I'm just going to really quickly go over this. This is a little bit different because you're telling a future story. In interviews, we're always looking back and we're bringing somebody into our previous memories, our previous experiences. But storytelling for presentations is you are now saying, okay, if you're pitching an idea to your boss, or you're pitching like a sales pitch, so to a potential client, you're no longer the center of the story. They are the center of the story. And you are painting a story, you're painting a future for them where they are the people or the person who's starring in it. And so a couple of questions here to just change a little bit how you think about that. Who will this idea or change impact? So it's going to impact them, but who else? Who else in the organization? Who else in their inner circle is that going to impact? And that's really going to tie in again with relationships. If this change happens, let's say you're pitching to a COO, and this is a new like HR finance system, and you're pitching this change. Okay, well, does that mean that you're no longer going to need to have like these 3 HR analysts, for example? Oh, now you need to go and communicate that to the chief of HR or chief of staff or whatever, that they need to like let 3 people go. So being able to paint this picture, how does this idea impact you and your relationships with the people around you? Purpose, what business trigger is making it necessary to implement something new or make this change? Well, maybe this company is realizing that, wow, we haven't updated our HR finance system in about 5 years. It's actually costing us, a lot more compared to our competitors, a lot more than the industry standard. And so to just really remain competitive, we need to make this change. Place, and what part of the company is this impacting? When is it having an impact? So this could also be things like, well, this is really impacting HR because it's increasing the salary expense of HR. It's preventing them from being able to have enough budget to invest in other areas of the company. And for the chief operations officer, this means giving HR a lot more of the budget, where this could actually potentially be put towards new innovation projects. Plot, how do you believe the story will play out? So if you're pitching this idea, well, if we implement this, we're going to have 3 weeks of strategy and planning. We're going to have like a 4-week rolling implementation period. We're going to have a 3-week blah, 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 whatever it is. So just more looking into the future with these types of questions. But again, really coming back to the storytelling basics, paint that picture for somebody. Because yes, we need to have the logic and the facts and understanding, okay, what is this business impact going to be? But at the end of the day, we're human beings. And I really believe you always need to have that mix of emotion and logic, because you convince people with emotions and then you close them with logic. And this doesn't matter if you're an actual salesperson or if you're doing it for interviews. So that is all the content I have for you guys today. But before you go, I have a really special announcement. From doing this series and from a lot of questions in the iLevelUp community, I've been really inspired to create a really amazing resource, really focused on interviews. This has been like the questions I've gotten the most about. And so I wanted to announce this tonight on the very last workshop of this series, that I'm going to be launching this course called Nailing Your Interview in English as a side bracket. And so this is going to be all of the questions that I've been getting from the iLevelUp community, a lot of the questions I've been getting through this workshop. And it's really going to be a massive extension of everything that we went over tonight. This is specifically focused on people that have previously been job searching in another country and they're now job searching in North America. So it's going to be 7 different sessions. It's going to be a pre-recorded course. And I'm also going to be including other scripts. So like scripts on how to introduce yourself, how to answer that question. So tell me about yourself, as well as how to talk and explain your weaknesses, tips on how to manage stress during interviews. So there's also going to be a little video in there with that breathing exercise that we did at the beginning of this workshop, and a couple other things like combining storytelling and interview prep, what body language projects confidence, and all those sorts of things. And that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. And
thank you
to all the attendees. Thank you for their great participation. Dana, this series were amazing. All the feedback and all the knowledge you share with us and with all the Hispanotech community. Thank you so much for this opportunity to learn. Announcements to go over. Come join us in the next online networking event. Do yoga with us and have a relaxing time while meeting new people. Remember to yoga with us on July 29. Registrations are open. In addition, you can join our mentorship program and you can register to be a mentor or a mentee and be part of a great and holistic experience. Last but not least, cheers to our volunteers who make this event possible. Oh, look, I'm there. Thank you so much for your time and dedication. We are also welcome to join us. If you want to be a volunteer, like me and like all the amazing volunteers that made possible Hispanotech events, just send us an email, and who knows, maybe you will be the next host.